Welcome to the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. I'm Melissa Lieberman, a fellow IC and business coach. On this podcast, I teach you to become a consistently booked independent consultant without becoming a pushy salesperson or working 24/7. If I can do it, you can too. Listen on to find out how. Welcome to the podcast. I'm so thrilled you're here. And today we're going to dive into lead generation procrastination. This is something that is such a trend that I see both with consulting business owner clients who come to me wanting help with bringing their business to the next level, as well as just generally in the industry. I think this is such a challenge that so many of us face because we're trying to balance running our business with working in our business, with working on our business. And quite frankly, lead generation is probably not your favorite thing to do, nor something you're necessarily comfortable with, right? And so as a result, that procrastination comes into play. And on top of the procrastination, I mean, it's really a twofold problem here. First, you procrastinate, and so then you're not getting the results or that consistency in your business development pipeline. And number two, you end up judging yourself and criticizing yourself, and that inner critic comes out commonly. And then it makes the problem even worse, right? You're having a problem and then you're layering on top of it, criticizing yourself for having the problem. And it's horrible. It's horrible. So let's fix it today. All right. So today we're going to focus on three things as it relates to lead generation procrastination. First, I'm going to tell you what the red herrings are. So there's three red herrings that we think are the reason why we are procrastinating, and they're not actually the reason. So I just want to get that out of the way. And then we're going to talk about the 5 most common root causes of procrastination. So if it isn't those red herrings, what is actually causing your procrastination? I'm going to give you a lot of examples so you can really identify for yourself what you might be suffering from here. And then finally, I'll share with you a 3-part lead generation procrastination remedy that you can implement for yourself. Now, listen, you might know very well that you're procrastinating. And so you're right on track with me here. You're tracking. You might think I'm not necessarily procrastinating. I just don't have enough time for business development. And that's the first red herring. I don't have enough time. That is not a real problem. You're running a business. You need to find the time. You need to make the time. This is important. Otherwise, you don't have a business, right? So saying I don't have enough time is not a root cause of procrastination. That's an excuse. Similarly, you might be saying to yourself, well, I don't really need to work on lead generation right now because I'm got a client that I'm working on, or my slate of consulting clients is full at the moment, so it's not necessary. That also is not a valid reason to be procrastinating or deferring lead generation. You might kind of ramp down the level of activity, but completely ignoring it because you're on a work, you're fully utilized at the moment is a recipe for disaster, right? So that's not a valid reason to procrastinate or defer lead generation. And then finally, another couple of red herrings are, as soon as I'm organized better, I will then be able to do my lead generation. I can tell you from personal experience, having implemented every sexy software out there almost, Salesforce, Pipedrive, you name it, creating some amazing process in a piece of software does not make you consistent at lead generation. It just delays the inevitable pain that we're trying to avoid, right? So telling yourself you need to get organized is not a valid thing to solve in order to solve your procrastination. I'll say it that way. Let me just tell you how to get organized. Open an Excel spreadsheet and put some columns on it, and now you're ready to go. Like now that problem is solved. This is not why you're procrastinating, that you don't have like a really good system in place. The other reason why some people say, if I just figured out the best way to generate these leads, then I wouldn't need to procrastinate anymore, or then I wouldn't procrastinate anymore. That is also a red herring. First of all, there's no best way. There's a lot of very effective ways. So picking one that works for you is the best way. And then moving forward, that's the best way versus researching and watching webinars and listening to podcasts even. Those are all just ways to stay in your comfort zone and you feel like you're learning and becoming an expert when in fact you're just deferring the actual work that will create results for you. So these are the red herrings. These are not the causes of you not being able to be consistent with your lead generation. It has nothing to do with time or your system or figuring out the best way or your level of knowledge. The true root causes of your procrastination all come down to the way you're thinking about lead generation. Most of them are subconscious and some are conscious. Few of them are conscious, to be honest. Most of them are subconscious, right? But the way you're thinking about lead generation subconsciously leads to either action or inaction. So let me tell you what that means. And then we'll dive into very specific examples to make this even more tangible for you. What this means is when you have high quality, successful business owner type thoughts about lead generation, you will naturally fall into action. You will naturally avoid procrastination. When you think things like lead generation provides value, having conversations with other people as a method of lead generation is great for them and for me and for my business. They want to hear from me. Like when you're reaching out and doing networking as a lead generation method, for example, those types of high quality thoughts, of course, if you think I have something valuable for them, it's going to be so much easier to book the time on your calendar and get on the schedule and have those conversations than it is for you to, when you start thinking things like I'm bothering them, or I don't know what I'm going to say, or I should probably figure out how to move someone from a first conversation all the way to the contract close before I ever talk to anyone. Those are low quality thoughts. Those are things that keep you in action, not taking action. When you think about lead generation as something that's difficult, as something that's hard, as something that's awkward, of course you're going to procrastinate. When you think about lead generation as something that's valuable, as something that's easy, as something that you're good at, which by the way, you get to decide all of this for yourself. There are no facts out there in the world that say either you're good or you're bad at this. It's the way you're thinking about you and yourself as a business owner, giving yourself the benefit of the doubt. That's what creates the momentum for you to stay in action and overcome procrastination. So that is at a high level what the root cause of your procrastination is. Let me give you some very, very specific root causes now so you can see how the high quality thinking and the low quality thinking come into play. And also, as I go through these 5 root causes, I'm going to share with you a real life example of each one and how to fix it, how to overcome it, so you can move out of procrastination into consistent action. So let's start with number 1. Root cause number 1 of your lead generation procrastination is what is called in the world, I didn't make this up. If you've done any type of professional development, it will sound familiar to you. It's called scarcity thinking. So what it means is when you start thinking that there's some finite amount of opportunity for you, then of course you start kind of freezing, right? And procrastinating because you don't want to quote unquote ruin that opportunity because it's finite. It could go away from a thought process perspective. So the scarcity thinking looks something like, I don't want to waste my chance with this person. So if we're using a lead generation example of networking or talking with another human being, basically, when you think something like, I don't want to waste my chance, of course, you're going to procrastinate because you focus in on the worry of what could go wrong. So an example here, I had a client who was had a lot of clients under her belt, but she wanted to get to a very consistent, repeatable, and predictable lead generation routine. And so she started off by just really taking an inventory of her network and figuring out who she might want to start talking with in order to start building a pipeline and that kind of thing. So she decided networking was going to be her lead generation method. And so from there, what she did was made this inventory and started reaching out to people and wasn't really getting much traction. And so as I started asking her a lot more questions, we figured out, okay, she was really reaching out to strangers. She was reaching out to people who seemed like quote unquote safe people to talk to. People basically she didn't know, who didn't know her, who were kind of tangential to what her industry, but it felt safe, right? And so the reason why she was doing this is she wanted to keep those really good potential leads, save them for later when she felt like she would be more competent. And I know so many of you do this. You would probably do this, and at least in the past, if not now, right? So you're just like saving this thing, saving it for a rainy day, hoping that you'll be, use it when you're really good at lead generation. And so as we started working on this together, we realized that she was in such a scarcity mindset. So the awareness for her, first and foremost, was so important to see how she was doing this. And then we put it into perspective for her. And for her, what really clicked is like, you can't waste a chance. You might have a conversation that doesn't necessarily go well, but that doesn't mean that it's going to waste that chance, quote unquote, with that person forever. And quite frankly, you having a lot of these reps under your belt doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have a great conversation with that particular person in 3 months versus now. Also, you can't really ruin your reputation in one conversation. And there isn't some finite number of potential clients. You might be like this client is in a pretty specific niche. That doesn't mean that if you have one conversation that doesn't necessarily go the way you want it to, that now you've ruined your chances in that entire industry. And let's just go to the worst case scenario. Let's say something happens and you end up ruining your reputation in a given industry and you can't work there ever again, which, believe me, is incredibly rare. I'm sure you would agree with that logically. There's always so many other opportunities to pivot into other industries or other solutions that you might offer. So this is so important for you to see where you may be having scarcity thinking and get yourself into the zone of really thinking about it from a different perspective. Well, number one, being aware of it. And then number two, get yourself into the perspective to really see that the stakes are truly not that high when it comes to having conversations with other people, whether it be networking or talking with people about potentially speaking for their organization, whatever it is. If you take the stakes down, you're going to overcome the procrastination and you're also going to come off so much better than if you're creating this amount of pressure and bar for yourself. Okay, root cause number 2 of procrastination as it comes to your lead generation is perfectionist thinking. This sounds like I need to figure out the best way first, as if there is a best way. I can assure you, I don't know, there's probably 20, 30, 40 different ways for you to generate leads. If you were to just list them all out, there's no very best way. There's a way that works for you, that you're able to be consistent at, and that really resonates with your ideal client. For the most part, that involves you having a conversation, networking, and having conversations with ideal clients, ideal referral partners, and just people who can connect you to other people. But what happens when we think there's this right way or the best way, we end up down that trap that I was mentioning earlier, the endless research and the endless planning. And I had a client who was really kind of stuck in this cycle, really having a hard time getting out of the perfectionist vortex. And so what we ended up doing is, again, just really recognizing that's what was happening was really important. Because it's so easy to look on the surface like, well, I better just get all my ducks in a row first and then start working on my lead generation. Sounds so logical. But as we realized they were doing this in order to just avoid the discomfort of having conversations and maybe them not going anywhere or feeling rejected or whatever it was, We figured that out. That was the blocker. And then they were able to shift into what's called imperfect action mentality. So, look, we don't know what the outcome is going to be of one specific conversation. And when you look at imperfect action, it's like, let me just have a lot of conversations, for example, or let me do whatever your lead generation method is, a lot of those things. And some are going to lead somewhere, some aren't. Having control over a specific conversation is not what we're looking for. We're looking for the bigger picture, which is to have a lot of activity and ultimately get the result from that. And so that's what we were able to do, is really get into that imperfect action to say, there's no perfect way of doing this. We're just going to do a lot and just keep getting better as we go. And ultimately for this client, what ended up happening is they had I don't know, 20 conversations or something. And one of those, well, probably the least likely on paper, led to a introduction to someone else that led to another introduction. So some breadcrumbs essentially that led to a multi six-figure contract. We had no idea what was going to happen, and we had no control over the exact steps, right? What we did do is we were able for her to drop the perfectionism and then focus on just getting into action and being really open to whatever would come from it. And that's how that unfolded. And I see that so often for clients when they're able to just drop the expectations and have human conversations, they're able to, things happen that they least expected. So for you, think about it. If you're getting stuck in perfectionism, just take away that expectation layer and get into some curiosity so that you can move forward and break out of the procrastination cycle. Okay, root cause number 3, making it about you. Making it about you. I get why you might make it about you. We all do this because we're ultimately selling our services and we are the one who delivers it. It isn't about you. So, for example, if you're doing some networking as a lead generation method, a lot of times what happens are thoughts like, I don't want to be needy. I don't want to come across as needy. I feel bad asking people for things. I don't want to ask for help. Does that sound familiar? Another one that I hear from clients is, I don't want them to think I can't run my business on my own. Like I need someone else to help me do it. That's not what we're doing here. This isn't about you. This is about you having conversations, you having interactions with other people in order to get to know them, to make a connection with them, to have a conversation with them, to understand what their challenges are, and then to offer something of value to them. Something of value. It might be your services. It might be a recommendation or a next step of some sort or an introduction for them. You're not going in there with the perspective of, I'm going to turn this person I'm talking to into a client. You're going into this conversation or this interaction from a lead generation mindset to say, I'm just really curious to find out what they might need and how I might help them. It turns it into about them versus about you. And that can take away the obstacle or the barrier and the procrastination that comes with it in such a simplistic way. So for you, think about, are you getting in your own way because you're making this about you? And then reframe it into, how do I make this about them, and being curious and quite frankly, just treating it like a consultative conversation so you can find ways to help them. And naturally from that, the leads occur. All right. Root cause number 4, not giving them credit. So this sounds like, I don't want to waste their time, or this won't be a benefit for them. It's just for me. When you're thinking about interacting with other people for lead generation, so often we kind of make decisions on their behalf about what's important to them. Oh, I know they're really busy. I don't want to impose. Why are you making decisions on their behalf? They're an adult. Let them make their own decisions. A story on this one for you. I had a client who told me, look, Melissa, I've exhausted my warm network, everyone I know. I don't want to go back to them and waste their time. So we really need to focus in on automating my lead generation. And I said, there is a time and place to automate lead generation, but you're at a stage in your business for this particular client, and most likely for yours as well, that having conversations is really the lowest hanging fruit. This is the most direct way to generate leads versus trying to automate something or make it as a mass marketing effort. So I started really questioning, why do you think your network is quote unquote exhausted? And then he started sharing, well, I just don't want to waste their time. I've already had these conversations with them already. And in some ways, as I dug even more in our coaching call, it's like, well, those conversations were 2 or 3 years ago. So clearly something could have changed in the last 3 years. So that's not exhausted. We could always circle back. And then as we dug in more, we realized he'd probably talked to 10% of his warm network. There was 90% that was still outstanding that he had basically written off for some reason or the other, which all folds into not giving that other person credit for being open to having a conversation or letting them decide. And so as we dug into this, we realized that there was such an untapped potential for this particular client to have conversations, not 50 of them a week, but just a couple a week, to really talk with his network, find out what's happening, what's keeping those former colleagues and friends and acquaintances up at night. And again, just figuring out where might he recommend that help them solve their problems. But instead, he was deciding for them, that he knew better, that they shouldn't waste their time on him. Let them decide if it's a waste of their time. First and foremost, you decide it isn't a waste of their time, that you're helping add value to them in their life in some way. And then let them decide, put the ball in their court. And then if you're getting rejected, quote unquote rejected, which means maybe they don't respond, means maybe they say no, or maybe later, whatever it is, then you get to be the business owner who's really good at handling whatever comes back at you. But don't decide for them. That's in their court. Put the invitation out there, and then you'll see how much more people are willing to have human conversations when you're approaching it that way. All right. So that's root cause number 4, giving them credit for making their own decisions about whether or not they're going to talk to you and have a networking conversation or whatever type of conversation it might be from a lead generation perspective. Okay. And then finally, the root cause number 5 of your procrastination is just really hiding. You hiding from the discomfort of feeling rejected. You hiding from the discomfort of feeling fear. Where are you hiding? One of the ways that this comes out so often is a thought process of, this lead generation method in my business should be scalable. And by scalable, in this case, most people mean, well, it should be repeatable and probably little human touch. And somehow the leads just pop up for my business and then I can move forward. I hear this often. Sometimes people come to me and say, well, I should run some kind of ads, or I should have a really heavy content strategy in order to generate leads. And the truth of the matter is, there truly is some points and inflection points in your business where this makes perfect sense as a strategy to automate some lead generation. But for the most part, for independent consultants, this is not the first, second, third, or fourth strategy you should be thinking about when it comes to lead generation. What's most effective for independent consultants as it relates to lead generation is having conversations with either your ideal potential clients or people who might refer you to your ideal potential client. As simple as that. But a lot of times we like to hide behind some idea that automation will be more effective, which really is just a elegant way or a sexy way of trying to avoid that rejection, avoid feeling like a failure. And so it sounds really good to say, well, I'm going to automate all of this. But at the end of the day, what you're really doing is avoiding that discomfort of rejection, avoiding that discomfort of failure, whatever your perceived failure is. Avoid feeling inadequate. That's really what it comes down to. And so the fix here is being aware of where you're doing this, where this hiding concept is creating procrastination or avoidance for you, and then overcoming it with the concept of walk before you run. Go have some conversations. Don't with ideal potential clients and or speaking engagements. You can scale that way, right? Where you're speaking to a group of your ideal clients. Meet with people who could refer you. Maybe they have some kind of parallel offering that where you both are serving the same type of audience. Those are the types of things that really move the needle and make a direct impact to your business. So you're not procrastinating to accomplish something that is so far advanced and beyond where you're at in your business and not applicable to what you're doing. Okay, so those are the 5 root causes: the scarcity thinking, the perfectionist thinking, making it about you, not giving them credit, and hiding behind some seemingly elegant solution that you want to put in place, which really allows you to just avoid the discomfort. So with that, let's talk about that procrastination remedy that I told you I would give you. The procrastination remedy, so to overcome the procrastination in your lead generation process, there are 3 things here. The first is create a practice for yourself to consistently strengthen your business owner mentality. So you're constantly redirecting your thinking into those higher quality thoughts that I shared with you versus the lower quality thoughts. So you can just look at it in kind of 3 buckets. What are your thoughts about yourself as it relates to lead generation? Something like, really purposefully and intentionally thinking about yourself as someone who adds value and creates connection, not someone who's needy and looking for someone else to help them. Then consistently strengthening your thoughts about the other people, thinking on purpose they're receptive, thinking on purpose this is valuable for them, thinking on purpose that they get to decide if this is important for them right now. And if not, it doesn't mean anything about you. And then thirdly, strengthening your thoughts about the process. Really thinking about conversations in general will lead me to opportunity, and I don't have to control the outcome of any given conversation in order to be successful. Thinking about the process in the sense of abundance, right? That there's so many opportunities out there. I could never ruin something by having one-off conversation. So that's step 1, strengthen your business owner mentality. Step 2, sit down and arm yourself with 2 lists. I love doing this. Sit down and ask yourself, what are the top 10 things that I could ask someone in a conversation that I'm having with them? Could be things like, are you a member of an association that is looking for speakers? Is there someone in your organization who's having this challenge? Would you introduce them to me? Whatever it is, just think about what could those 10 possible things be that you might ask someone. So you've got that armed, and when you're having these conversations, it can better flow off your tongue. Kind of grease the skids here a little bit for yourself. And similarly, write down what are the top 10 things I could offer to someone in addition to your services. I could offer an introduction to someone. I could offer an article to someone. I would write a white paper for a given challenge they might have. Whatever it might be, what could I offer someone that doesn't relate to them buying anything from me, but it's just me giving them value? And then finally, very tactically, schedule your lead generation into your calendar. We need to overcome the procrastination. We understand what's creating the procrastination. One of those 5 root causes is, if not all of them. But you've got to be able to become the business owner who puts a plan in place and decides to honor it no matter what, even though you're feeling insecure, even though you're feeling inadequate, even though you're feeling uncertain, even though you're worried about being rejected or having a failure, whatever it is. Schedule your time in your calendar for lead generation on a daily basis or weekly basis, and then honor it no matter what. Be aware of what might be trying to talk you into procrastinating, and then use the tools that I've shared with you today to overcome that procrastination and continue moving forward with imperfect action. All right. So that's what I've got for you today. I want to also just really emphasize for you, if you haven't done it already, go take the assessments. I've created 2 assessments for you to give you insight into your business. The first is the recession readiness assessment. We talked about it on last week's episode. Go take that assessment. It's at icassessment.com, and it will walk you through a series of questions and then give you a report at the end about where you can prioritize readiness for the recession. And then similarly, go take the business scaling assessment. You'll answer, I think it's 26 questions, and then it will give you a really detailed report about where your business is really set up and positioned well for scaling, and then the areas where you would want to dive in and strengthen those weaker areas. So that gives you a really good blueprint in terms of scaling. And by scaling, I just want to be clear, that doesn't mean you have to grow or create some massive business with a bunch of subcontractors and team members. What it means is you're increasing your income and your revenue, and you're able to do that with working smarter, less hours, more efficiently. And it doesn't have to mean that you're creating some complex organization. So that's at icscorecard.com. So be sure to go take those 2 assessments, and I will see you again next week. Take care.
Thanks for joining me this week on the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. If you liked today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. First, click subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to make sure you don't miss future episodes. Next, leave me a review in your podcast app so other independent consultants can find and benefit too. And finally, to put the ideas from today's episode into action, head over to melissalieberman.com for the show notes and more resources to help you grow your consulting practice from your first few projects into a full-fledged business. See you next week.